Hello everyone, I'm some guy on the internet and I've played over 200 hours of the Once Human beta. Now I've seen a lot of videos on the game, a lot of them were sponsored or they did them at about 10 hours of playtime or something like that, but I'm at 200 and I feel like I've done just about everything in the game. There's really only a handful of things that I haven't done, not even a handful, just literally a couple things I haven't done, so I can't really talk too much on those, but I have an idea of how they work and stuff like that, so I'm going to delve into my feedback. Basically, this whole video is primarily going to be feedback. So if you're here to like find out about the game, might not be the best video for you. I needed to talk about my what I think of the game and what I think needs to change and like feedback for the devs essentially, but I just needed to get my thoughts out onto something, you know. I needed to say it so I can sleep at night and they can stop tormenting me incessantly. So that is why I'm making this video. So if you're looking for more of like, what's this game about? Go check out a different video. If you're looking for, I want to know what I think compares to what this guy thinks, then this is the video for you. So anyway, let's get into it. And I want to start off with like the world of the game. And basically just the all-encompassing thing, the scenery and the just design of the world and the towns and stuff like that. It's all wonderful. The biomes are great. Very little copy pasta, or at least it's spread out enough to where it doesn't stick out like a sore thumb. It needs a little bit of a geometry smoothing in some areas because it's really easy to get stuck, but it is there, and sometimes it can be quite jarring, but that's not the biggest deal. The big deal for me is enemy variety. There is a lot of it. And normally that's a good thing. I know, right? But why am I saying it as a negative? Well, it's because they throw everything at you really early. You don't really see a lot of enemy variety later on. So you see like everything by like level 20-ish, maybe for like 1 or 2 elite style enemies. And then you're fighting and doing the same things at level 50 that you are at level 5. And it's just, it can get a little stale for some people. Now, it's not a big deal for me, but I know there's a lot of people out there who do not like that. They need to have a little bit of enemy variety in them so that it kind of keeps them interested, so they don't feel like they're doing the same exact thing over and over again. And I get that. I do. So I kind of wanted to just put that out there as a little bit of feedback. Although for me, it's not the biggest deal. I just know there's a lot of people who do feel that way. But the big deal for me is the copy paste of elites versus bosses. There's a lot of elites and bosses, especially in the overworld, that are kind of interchangeable with each other, and that is just not, it doesn't feel as good. You know what I'm saying? Like when you go into a dungeon and you get to the end of the dungeon and there's a big boss there, and then it turns out that big boss is the same as an elite you just fought in a regular overworld town outside who was really easy, and it just doesn't have the weight to it as a dungeon boss. I understand like what they're doing with it, but I really feel like in certain aspects, especially like Leah Research Facility, which is considered the game's raid, it's a multi-boss, multi-encounter instance that you do ideally with an entire squad of 4, and the bosses in there are literally just souped up elites from the overworld. You got the Dr. Mannheim's the testicle guy, and you got the last boss is the jellyfish lady, and then you have a bunch of the other elites that are just in the raid that you fight. And it's just a raid and encounters like that, even if you don't consider it a raid, but a piece of content like that is a great way to showcase some unique boss design. They already have some cool mechanics in there, and the way they lay out the raid is really cool, where it's like the first encounter teaches you the mechanics for the second encounter, and that teaches you a mechanic for the last encounter, and then the third encounter teaches you another mechanic that's used in the third or the last encounter. And I think that's a really cool way of laying it out. But the design of the enemies, it just doesn't feel like, oh, this is the big boss, you know. It's just like, oh, it's another jellyfish lady, oh, it's another guy throwing his testicles at me. Like, it doesn't have the weight to it. Although I love the piece of content, it's a lot of fun, it's really cool, and I think the game needs more of it. But I feel like the design of the enemies in there are they're just a little repetitive. It doesn't feel the way a piece of content like that should feel. So I feel like these types of bosses are a really good chance to break out your unique designs aside from the big story bosses. Now, the big story bosses are great, I do kind of want to get into those a little bit here because the first boss is really cool, especially on hard mode. I've done them all on hard mode. I have all the season goals done. My favorite one's probably the first one. I do like that. I think the hard mode version with its mechanics and how it works should be the normal version, but either way, it is my favorite one. I think it's the coolest one. Tree Ant boss is the second boss. That one's all right. It's got some cool mechanics and it's completely different from the first one. That's what I like about a lot of these story bosses, is that their mechanics and the way they work are totally different from the other ones. Boss number 4, Rabizex, the doggy. He's all right. He's pretty cool, although he's a little bit easy. He's easier than boss number 2 and 1, in my opinion. I don't know. I feel like he should be a lot harder for his position in the hierarchy of bosses. And then there's boss number 3, the spider boss. I do want to say, fuck that boss. That boss is not good. I want to preface this by saying, if the boss worked the way it's supposed to, and if these changes were implemented into the game at the start, it'd probably be my favorite boss, just based on arena and mechanics. It would probably be my favorite one, but it doesn't work like this. So let me explain it a little bit, all right? Most of these mechanics I have issues with are virtually unavoidable. Most of the things in this boss fight are virtually unavoidable, which is not good. A player should be able to avoid damage, especially that much damage. But the first one is she shoots a web at you, can be from across the entire arena, and she wraps you up in that web and then she pulls you to her. And this could be across the entire arena. And you're just stuck there and you are along for the ride until she gets you really close, and then you can break out, and then she slams you for half of your HP. It does not feel very good. There should absolutely be a way to break out of that, whether it's spam F over and over and over and over and over again, or a good idea I heard from a fellow Twitch streamer over at twitch.tv/antisolarflare. Go check him out. He's super nice, very helpful player. If you want to know more about the game, check out his stream. He suggested make it so where your melee weapon is used, and then the type of melee weapon is important at that point. So you want to bring something sharp that has slash damage, so you can get yourself out of that web faster. I like that idea. Might be a little bit over the top, but I think it's cool. If you can't do something like that, just let us spam F to get out or something if we do it fast enough so we don't get slammed. That's all you really need to do there. Now, the other mechanic is she goes immune. You can't hurt her. She fills the entire room with gas, and it starts taking damage, and it doesn't feel good. And there's virtually no way to lower the amount of damage you take. And you have to have some pretty good quick activators in order to out heal it and stay alive. Now, there's a safe area directly under her, which is cool, but this goes away after a short amount of time. And then you're stuck until you destroy, I believe it's 7 glowing eggs off in the distance. These glowing eggs are pretty easy to kill, but they are not easy to see, maybe because the room is filled with fucking gas. Make it so we can actually see these things, so we can take them out in an appropriate amount of time, and we stop going down to a bullshit mechanic. On top of that, once you destroy these, you are supposed to be able to shoot her to destroy the shield that she's immune with, and it's supposed to stun her. She continuously, for me, I think only two times out of the probably 10 times I have killed her in hard mode, did she actually have that mechanic. Every other time, as soon as I destroyed the egg, she climbed down and I just started doing damage. I didn't have the opportunity to break that shield and get a stun on her, because that's what that mechanic does, is it stuns her, she flips over upside down, and she's stuck there for a little bit, so you can do some damage. I almost never get that mechanic, and it is a good mechanic that helps the player out, especially after going through such a hard mechanic prior. So please fix it. It's very buggy, it's very wonky, and on top of all of these crazy mechanics and annoying damage that you can't avoid, there's a shit ton of ads. Those are never fun. Okay, chill out with the ads, especially these guys. Fuck these guys. Turbo fuck them. Get them out. No, I'm done. They're scary, they're creepy, and they blind you. No thank you. Moving on. Let's talk about the story. Moving on. Let's talk about the core gameplay loop. Now, the core gameplay loop involves you running around in the open world trying to survive, gathering food, resources, scrap to turn into resources, building your base, building crafting benches, crafting guns, crafting ammo, crafting food, crafting other things, tools, cars, mounts, which we'll get into later. All sorts of stuff like that. And in order to get all of these resources, you have to go to what are called strongholds. These strongholds are locations, all of them pretty unique. They're pretty cool. It's really exciting to go to a new area and check out what the strongholds have to offer there. And you have some objectives to complete while you're there. It's usually find a weapon crate, find a gear crate, kill a certain amount of enemies, kill an elite, maybe not, find the mysterious treasure. All those things are repeatable except for finding the mysterious treasure. Well, that's the one that gives you your blueprints, and most of them are locked to specific strongholds. So you go to this stronghold to get this blueprint, this stronghold to get this blueprint, so you can craft this gun or that weapon or that piece of armor, which is cool and dandy, but it's a one-time thing. So you kind of are stuck with using the wish machine, which is the kind of like a gacha mechanic, to get more blueprints. That does not feel good. Now I know that the developers have addressed this and have said that they plan on putting blueprints in as rewards to things like dungeons and things like the raid and stuff like that, which is very good. I just really wanted to reiterate that really needs to happen. We'll talk a little bit more about on blueprints and loot and rewards and stuff like that later. But what I want to focus on in this section is the objectives that you do in these strongholds. There needs to be some variation. When you're doing a stronghold at level 45, it is the same exact thing that you're doing at level 5 when you first start. Same objectives, same type of thing. And in fact, a lot of them get even easier. So I highly hope that they add some variation to these objectives. Stuff like maybe some time trial stuff, maybe like a wave survival type objective in certain places where if you don't complete it, you got to start over. So it's not super punishing. It's still pretty easy, but there is a little bit of variation in there. And that's just some suggestions. There's 100 different ways that you could go about doing that. I just wanted to throw some out there because I really think the game really needs that, especially later on. Another thing I wanted to mention was the AI in the open world. It's stupid. It's very stupid. I mean, most of the time you can walk up right next to something and it won't even know you're there. It can be quite annoying, to be honest. And it's a little bit of a bummer because it just kind of makes a lot of the open world a little bit too easy. However, I do want to state that the developers have said they are aware of this. In an interview that one of the developers did with King Gathalion on his Twitch channel, which, by the way, if you want, go check out the VOD for that. It's a very good interview, and there's a lot of really good information that Derek, the developer, gave to all of the people watching, and it's actually very exciting. So definitely go check that out. So they are aware of it, but I do want to reiterate that the AI right now, it needs some work, man. It needs some love. Now, since we mentioned it a little bit, I do kind of want to talk about looting and rewards and stuff like that. Like I said, blueprints from the raid and dungeons and bosses like that would be really cool. I do kind of want to expand on that a little bit and say taking that a step further would actually be really cool, because right now the game is, end game is grind the boss you want, get some rewards, get some mods and stuff like that. Mods are cool. We want those to stay in the game and the re-rolling to stay in the game and stuff like that. We just also want to be able to get blueprints. Well, I think it would be cool to have a focus farm on certain bosses or certain pieces of content for what you want to do. So say 1 week you have the spider boss dropping SMGs and like boot blueprints, right? And then the next week it's going to be like snipers and hats or something like that, so that you can actually go ahead and rotate which bosses you're doing, which pieces of content that you have to grind all over and over and over again for your specific build. I think that would be really cool. Now, since we're on the topic of looting and rewards, let's talk about resources. Almost everything in the game is very balanced resource wise, in my opinion. It's very generous. It's very like, here's a ton. Here's a shit ton. You're good to go. You don't have to grind for hours just getting the resources that you need. However, there are two. One of them is gunpowder, formerly known as weapon powder, formerly known as gunpowder, formerly known as weapon powder. They keep changing it back and forth. The other is acid. That being said, while I'm recording this, yesterday they did do a patch and they added so where these things called mist zones, they're kind of like open world, like public event type things where you have a little bit of a survival aspect. And they give you a little bit of reward. They change it so that those give you more acid now, and it's actually pretty good. It's a very welcome change. I want to focus in specifically on the enemies that drop these things, because the way it works now is when you need them, you go kill the specific enemies. It's human enemies for gunpowder / weapon powder, or zombie enemies for acid, and they drop at certain amounts based on the enemy's level. At levels like 1 through 10, they usually drop 1 to 2 acid, and usually drop 1 gunpowder. And then at level like 30 to 50, they usually drop like anywhere between 4 and 5 acid to 6 and 7 acid. and like 2 to 3 gunpowder. The gunpowder really takes a dive towards the end of the game, and that's kind of a bummer. And then on top of that, the elites in these areas of these tier of enemies or this level of enemies, they don't drop any more. They drop either the same amount or sometimes even less than the normal enemies. That is bad. That feels very bad. These are elites. These are the tougher enemies. They should always drop more, or at least the same exact amount on the high end. You know what I'm saying? So my suggestion is that you up the amount of each thing dropped at each tier of enemies. So enemies at the beginning of the game, instead of dropping 1, they're going to drop 2. And then the elites will, at the beginning of the game, can drop like a minimum of 5. They always drop 5 or something like that. Until you get to the end of the game where you really need that stuff. Enemies like level 45 enemies in, say, in Blackfell, they usually drop I think 6 or 7 acid. Now they would drop 7 or 8 acid, and then the elites there would drop 14 to 16. And I think that would be absolutely perfect. And then on top of that, you have the mist zones for acid. Now that would kind of bring it up a little bit to where you're getting a little bit more, and you don't feel like you have to do 6 laps around Blackfell to get a decent amount of acid. Now it's like 1 to 2, which is good because it takes like 20-30 minutes. That's a good length for a farm, in my opinion, for a good amount of resources. And then with gunpowder, they should obviously bring that up. It needs to be more because gunpowder is so little. And then on top of that, acid is used for way too many things in a game. Way too many things in the game. I think they need to remove acid as a requirement to make either meds or gunpowder. One of those two needs to go. You got to get rid of it. And then with gunpowder, with the higher tier of ammo, you shouldn't have to use more gunpowder. When you hit steel, it starts taking 2 gunpowder per set of bullets, and I think it should still be 1 because you're already increasing the price with the type of material you use to make the ammo. I don't think you should increase the amount of gunpowder it requires as well. Since we're kind of talking about balancing of resources, let's talk about weapons. How's that sound? The Divivo. Shrapnel. Don't kill it, but do nerf it. Just slightly, just a little bit. Just a little bit. Nerf it just a little bit, all right? But bring everything else up to its level. Here's everything else. Here's the Divivo. Don't do this. You need to do this. All right, that's what you need to do. Everything else needs more of a buff. Divivo needs a slight nerf. That's it. Because when you do that, when you nerf one build and leave everything else the same, you're just making it so these people over here don't have as much fun and they get upset. And then they got to go and grind a new build that's better than what they have now because you nerfed it into the ground. You ruined their build. That sucks. Don't ever do that. That is bad. You should always start with this. Because all this does is make sure all of these people are having more fun. And these people have the same amount of fun. These people have more fun. Makes sense? That's how you should start it. Everything else needs to come up. Divivo, just bring it down a little bit. Just a little bit with shrapnel, okay? That's all I gotta say about that. Earlier I mentioned group content. Now, the way grouping works in the game is you have your parties that, you can have 4 people in it. And they don't have to be like friends or anything like that. You can just have a party of 4, but then you have your hive, and right now your hive is a party of 4 that is kind of like persistent. It's not always together, but they can be on at the same time. But what you get from that is a hive base. That's really cool. It's a really cool feature. Make it 6. Make it 6 people, please. I understand that parties are parties of 4, and that's fine. You can keep it that way, although I do think you should get some, like, 6-man content. That would be really cool. But either way, even if parties are only 4, you should still make hive 6, because lots of people have lots of friends, and they want to have as many people in their hive as they can, and it would also help level things up when certain people can't be on, like myself. And now we got warbands. Now, I do want to talk about warbands just a little bit. Now, this is the thing I have the least amount of experience with. I am in a warband. I am in My Dad is NetEase. I am in King Cathalion's a warband. And the only thing we really haven't done is the engagement zones. However, I don't know how it works, and I might have, with permission from another member who was the only other member on at the time, I might have spent half of the warband fund to bid on an uncontrolled area, because suddenly an area wasn't uncontrolled or was uncontrolled. So I was like, let's buy it. Why not? Now at this juncture, I don't know if we won the bid or not. I don't know how that's going to work or anything like that. Like I said, that's the one thing I haven't really done yet, but I'm trying to do it before the beta is over, just so I know. I got you guys. My issue, though, with Warbands right now, the only thing that I can actually talk on is the way you get these funds to make these bids on these locations is by members donating items to the Warband every week. It's limited to 10 items a week. Why is it so low? That should be like the daily limit, should it not? It just feels weird to me, and I'm like, dude, I could crank it out, man. I could give you like 1,000 platinum crystals and not feel a dent in my stuff. Like, that's exaggerating a little bit, but still, like, let me give some more, at least 10 a day instead of 10 a week. That just feels like a long time. I don't know how the balancing with money works. It just feels weird to me, and I kind of wanted to bring that up. I feel like if I want to give more to my warband, I should be able to do so. Now, there's a little bit of PvP stuff I do want to talk about. The thing I want to focus on is the workshop defense. These need a buff in rewards. They are not worth it at all to do in any way, shape, or form. You get a little bit of fuel, you get a little bit of acid, and that's it. And it's a little bit. It's not a, it's like 20 or 30. It's not a lot. It needs to be way more, especially because in those situations, you are risking pieces of gear that you've upgraded. You've put Stardust in, you've put energy links in, all sorts of stuff in. You're risking all of that. And for 20 acid and 20 fuel? No, thank you, man. Make it so where those are worth. It should be hundreds. It should be hundreds. And on top of that, that's going to make it so people who are looking for that and might want to be, be PvP guys with their PvPnuses, make them actually want to go and fight and take those people out and get their reward, because then it's actually worth it. That's all I really want to say about that. Next up, let's talk about building. I like the building in the game. I think it's very well done. I think it's pretty thorough, but it really needs a once over, maybe even a twice over or threes over, whatever you want to call it, for snapping. Snapping is the most frustrating thing about building in any game, let alone this game. It's very, 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 very frustrating. Please fix it. Please. It needs to work better, and there needs to be fewer limitations with where you can place a piece of building. Little tiny things being in the way, I don't care. Get rid of them. They shouldn't hinder a build. Now, it's different if it's like an actual building or a car or a massive boulder mountain or something like that. That I understand. But when it's like a little tiny bush, I don't care. Get rid of the bush. Have it destroy the bush. Have the bush go through it. I don't care. That should not limit the building, because you're hurting the creativity that players can have when it comes to their builds by limiting them with these silly little things. And a lot of the time, they don't even make sense. Like, it'll just be like, can't build here. Why? Fuck if I know, man. You just can't, okay? I said so. Just listen. Nobody wants that. Just let them build. Let the people build. On top of that, we need a few extra pieces. We need like a quarter wall, vertical, and, horizontal. We need horizontal support beams. We need smaller roofs. Please, these roofs are huge, man. Let us make some smaller roofs. That would be very nice. On top of a few other things. But if you do that, you're going to see some crazy awesome builds to where you're going to have an entire section of your community that are doing build reviews on YouTube. You're that close. You're that close to having an entire other facet to promote your game with. Like, that is very good to have that, in my opinion. On top of that, I would love to see more decorations, especially of assets that are already in the game. Being able to put those in your house is great. More wallpapers, maybe unlockable wallpapers would be really cool. I would love to see that. The most important thing to me right now is I think power generation availability is a big issue, especially outside of a Hive base. The Hive base is fine, I understand. I do think it needs to be bumped up one every tier. Just one would be nice. But really, it's about personal bases. You have two. That's not enough. I don't have enough with 5 in my Hive base. How are you supposed to make it work with 2 in a personal base? Yeah, we need another one. We have a whole build rating system up in the left corner, whereas you get a bigger house, you add better decorations, you add better equipment, your build rating goes up. tie power generation into that build rating, so when it gets higher, you unlock more power generation, because you're going to need more power for all of your equipment that you have. If you have a farm, if you have multiple deviants, you're going to need more power. So tie in with that build rating, so that when that gets up towards the top, you can end up with 4, 5, or 6 power generators. That will actually be enough for like personal territories, in my opinion. And then obviously hives, you should always grow with the size of the hive, with how long you've been going. On top of the fact, with the hive level going up, you're already getting up to 5 and 6. I do think it needs to go a little bit higher than that towards the late game, but I'm not too concerned about that right now. Just the personal territories, they really need to have more power, especially with the amount of deviants. Speaking of deviants, we need some more information in game on these things, man. We need to know why they're unhappy. All right, I don't want to see like, oh, it's the electric eel's moods changed for the worse. Why? Fucking fine, I'll figure it out. I can't figure it out because he's already got everything he likes. He's in a place he likes. The temperature's gotta be the temperature he likes. However, I don't have a way of telling that in the game, guys, so we need a way to tell that in the game. He's got his blue light. He's got parts that he likes. He's got the animals that he likes. He's right next to the biomass generator, and he's fucking mad. And you know what? That makes me fucking mad. So fix it. I think we need to know why a deviant is no longer happy. I think we need to know in the logs. You can show that you have a log in the game, which is a genius idea to put that in there. Add a reason why. Top of that, I think the mood swings need to be tweaked a little bit, because I lost my first eel because I went to bed with him being totally happy for hours. By the way, it was probably like 4 or 5 hours. He was totally happy and 100% secure. I woke up the next morning about 6.5 hours later, and he was fucking gone. Don't know why. I need to know why. Like, tell me why. At least tell me why so I can correct it for next time. But no, there's no explanation as to what happened. No explanation as to what caused it. There needs to be that there, and I do think there needs to be a minimum that they stop at when a player is offline. Say it stops at 5%. Say the cap is like, if you're offline, your deviant can go down to 5% secure until you log on, and when you log on, that last 5% starts ticking, and you better run around. You better check all your deviants every time you get online. I think that is a good idea, because having it break out and not knowing what happened because it happened while I was asleep sucks. Farming needs a little bit of a buff. I do think some of the crops in the game, they take way too long to grow. Speaking like looking at wheat and corn and stuff like that, they take way too long, especially in comparison to like an orange tree, which takes like 20 minutes, whereas the wheat and the corn take like an entire day, it seems. I do think that needs to be buffed, and I do think that the yield from each of these needs to be increased by 1 or 2. Also, running a farm on a personal base, not a hive base, is virtually impossible if you have any deviants and any like electric stove or anything like that with the amount of power generation. So kind of, bringing that full circle back to there. But yeah, I do think farming needs a little bit of a buff at personal bases. I would also like a touch on vehicles a little bit. All of them need to be able to go uphill better. All of them, period. Their acceleration and the inertia switch, like if you stop and then start going again, let me go. Like right now, if you stop in the game and then you try to start going right away, it takes forever to speed back up. Even more so than if you were from a complete stop and started going. I don't know what the deal is. It's something with the inertia mechanic or whatever you got going on with the code. Something's got to be tweaked there to where the vehicle will just go. But mainly the Jeep. The Jeep needs a big buff. It needs a speed buff. It needs a acceleration buff. And it desperately needs an uphill buff, because I'd love to use the Jeep because of the storage. I virtually never use it because it's just too slow. Also, fix the flying semi-truck.
Oh, that's not my truck. That's somebody else's house. That's an ugly house. My truck's better. The difference between that man and my truck is my truck is a truck. No! I can fix it. You're stuck in this tree, man. I got you. Get down. Get out of the tree. You gotta get out of the tree, dude. No, don't go in that tree, man. No, don't. Dude, it used to. Yeah, I think it'll fly away faster if I left the vehicle. It seems like it doesn't go super high if I'm in it. Oh!
The last main thing I want to cover is fishing. Now, I am a sucker for good fishing mechanics in any video game, and I think Once Human has an amazing base that can grow into a really good, fun fishing mechanic. But it needs some work, man. It really does. Many of the animations are way too slow, way too long, and just, it doesn't make much sense. And when you deploy your rod right now, when you get it out and you hold it in your hand, and then you do this, and then it extends, why are we locked in place? I have died many times because I've been invaded right as I've clicked to extend my rod, and I can't move anymore. And then I have to sit there and wait till the animation's finished. And then I can hit escape, and then the animation of it going back in starts. And then I gotta wait till my character slowly puts it back into their backpack, brings their arm forward, and then I can run. Get rid of that. Get rid of that. The animation lock or the movement lock shouldn't happen until I start a cast. Period. Speaking of casting, get rid of this right-click round robin bullshit with the space bar. Get rid of that. It should be click and hold. When you're holding it, it goes out. You let go. That's when the cast goes. Easy peasy. Looks good. Way more fun. Way less convoluted. Do it that way. Please. I beg of thee. On top of that, we do need a little bit more like visual feedback for fishing. Speaking of visual feedback, they actually did do a little bit of an update with this last patch for fishing. I didn't know about it until I was fishing this morning. But it used to just be an orange, like kind of a highlight thing when you send your cast out. But now when it hits the water, it turns green. I do like that. I think that's good. That's a good start. But we need more. We need a little highlight where our line is. We need a little color indicator when our line's about to break. And I think we need some information on the fish when we catch it. Just like a little card. Like as soon as I'm holding it up like this, let me know what the information of the fish is. Like what kind of fish is it? How many fillets can I get out of it? How big is it or whatever? Let me know then before I have to put it in my backpack and find out what it is. On top of that, I do want to talk a little bit about the animation thing, and I just thought of this today. I can't believe I didn't think about it earlier. But when you're fishing and a fish goes to the left, you have to turn your camera to the right, and then your character will pull the rod to the right so that you're fighting against the fish and you can reel them in easier and your line doesn't snap. I do like that mechanic. I do. Make it so where when we turn, because we're already locked in place, don't move the camera. If we move our mouse, just have our character turn the rod like this. So we can actually still see the fish, because if we turn our camera, we can't see the fish anymore. That's not fun. That's not good. That's not even how fishing works in real life. You're not going, "Bleh." When we move the mouse, since we're already movement locked, just have it move our rod so that we can do it that way. I think that would be a lot better and make it a lot smoother as well. On top of that, let it auto reload our bait until we are out of bait or we manually select another bait. I understand the hotbar thing. The hotbar thing is nice. But just have it auto load the bait. It's just a little convoluted. I don't know why you would opt to not have that. Just have it auto reload the bait. Now, I do want to talk about the rewards from fishing, because I think you have a great opportunity here to have some really cool rewards. I think we should be able to get trophy fish, like as a rare drop. I do like how you get a deviant out of it. That's really cool as well. I would also like to see stuff like chests. You pull out a chest and then you open it and you get some like sea based like designed furniture for your house or something like that. I think that would be really cool. And then I also think that you need to look at the balancing of fish for each area, because right now the opening area, the gar, the lowest level area, you get a gar that has the most fillets. It's the smallest, like one of the smallest fishes you can catch in the game, and it gives you the most fillets out of everything, including the high level area. That just doesn't make any sense to me. You just need to look at the balancing for the fillets. That's it. And then with cutting them into fillets, don't make us do every single one separately with a pop-up. That's not good. Just have them stack, and then we can hold F on it and turn them all. We can do a little slider like you got many other things. Do a little slider like cut this many into fillets, and then you can pop up. You've got 36 fillets or whatever. Done. Perfect. Easy. That's how it should work. Now, I pretty much covered just about everything I wanted to talk about, and there's a lot more. This game has so much, but I pretty much covered the big ticket items that are my opinion. They're the big ticket items that I'd love to see in the game. But I do want to kind of just machine gun some ideas at you guys. So buckle up. Here we go. Jet skis and fishing boats, water base, doggos, Kato, more giant world bosses like Dakini, a giant city biome, dinosaurs. Do with that information as you would like. That is it for this video, ladies and gentlemen. And I honestly could go on forever, but I'm not going to. So thank you guys so much for watching. I'd love to hear your feedback in the comments down below. Don't forget to check me out over on twitch.tv/DiarySaint, and I'll see you guys later. Adios.
Do any of these fuckers ever blast out of the wall and have like a huge cum shot?